You know those moments when you're doing what you love in your business? Maybe it's standing on stage or creating content. Whatever it is, you're totally immersed and time just seems to slip by. This is called the flow state.
At SpeakerFlow, we're obsessed with how to get you there more often. Each week, we're joined by a new expert where we share stories, strategies, and systems to help craft a business you love. Welcome to Technically Speaking. Welcome to the final episode of season 3 of Technically Speaking. We're so excited that you're here for us. Today's a little bit of a different episode than usual.
It sure is.
You're about to get the most raw, authentic version of Austin Taylor that you've had yet. What we realized is that as part of this, wrap up of season 3, we want to reflect on the lessons that we've learned over the last few years and also give you a sense of where things are going since this is a change. So that's what we're here to do.
And as a side note here, if you have children in the car, if you're listening to this on speaker or something, just know this episode is stronger with language than many of our other episodes. We weren't lying when we said authentic. So enjoy, and we'll see you on the other side. It's so weird getting into a recording because, I feel prior to a recording, we're just ourselves, just talking about nothing.
You have to be something else.
And then you turn the button on, and it's like my brain just blanks out and makes me feel
it feels like you have to make a point. And I think that's what's hard is it feels like you have to force a thought rather than just let the thought happen. And you and I are also people, we've talked about this before, that are perfectly okay with silence while we're trying to think about something. But it feels like there can't be just space for thought, or you know what I mean? I'm never going to just stop and consider what you just said for a while. I feel like I have to just have something ready to say back.
It's the most boring podcast on the planet. It's just
pauses of 3 minutes long, just silence while we're pondering something. No one would listen to our
That's
show.
how it should be, though. I'm so sick of
that's how conversations happen.
That's how conversations happen. I'm sick of the persona. I gotta yeah.
Authenticity matters.
Yeah, and I think we own that pretty well. The Austin and Taylor people get in person and meetings is pretty consistent. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like the podcast has always been one area where I just can't let go of the persona for some reason, and I'm killing that person. So
whatever it even is, I'm not even sure to
I don't know
how to put
maybe
my finger on what the quality is.
To some degree, or maybe we feel like you have to behave in a certain way. That's usually what it is, right? I mean, I think we're wired to want to fit into a community in some way or be accepted in a certain way. And I don't know, there's just kind of unspoken standards, it feels like sometimes, about being a podcast host, and you want to mold to those, having the perfect segue and the intro and the voice and all of this nonsense that is just not my personality. Yeah, for me personally, it's probably because I want to I care about it being successful, the show and the things we're doing, and having good conversations with people. But for some reason, that feels tied to the persona that comes with being hosting a show. And I don't think it needs to be.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I think for me, it feels more like I'm forcing it than anything else. I still feel more or less myself, but I feel like I don't give myself the space to have my authentic thoughts. I feel forced to have thoughts. And there's also the whole thing. It's also, it's weird because I'm perfectly comfortable with not knowing all the answers in so many other areas of life. But it feels like when you're recording a show, you should have more information than sometimes I feel like I have. And so I feel like I need to have an opinion about something that I'm not qualified to even have an opinion about. Yeah. Every time we ever talk to somebody that is talking about storytelling and how to put together a proper presentation, I'm like, oh yeah, that perfectly makes sense because X, Y, and Z. I have no fucking clue. I'm not qualified. Like
Uh,
even if I've like observed a pattern, I'm still not qualified to weigh in at all. But I feel like I have to because I'm like running this show. You know, that's
yeah,
weird.
for sure.
But
Yeah, I guess it's the difference of being the expert and being the facilitator. Yeah, it feels
yeah,
like you always have to build on stuff, though, is the problem in like a
it's
typical
true.
podcast situation. Like somebody says something, and then you have to put your insight in to layer on top of it. And now, let's be honest, sometimes guests, holy crap, just
Yeah,
dry as a bone. Like,
true. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, you combine like lack of being qualified with having to pull stuff out of somebody. Like, it's not always easy.
No. There's
Yeah.
also something to be said about you and I choosing to like cover a broad range of topics with this show, where like
Yeah. I don't
the
even know if that was
context of
a choice. It feels like it shouldn't have happened in the first place.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, we definitely got outside of like what is our core skill set, which to some degree is fine because we're learning something, but we should like
Should
recognize the
be
fact that,
purposeful, intentional.
yeah, it should be
That's for
intentional.
sure.
It should be because you and I are trying to learn something, not because we're try to be experts in something we're not. So,
Yeah.
and I don't
And
think
I
we
don't know.
necessarily are. Like, that's probably too strong of a
No.
word, but I feel like I feel pressure to be, even if,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
feel like to the point of like the content of technically speaking so far, it's been great. We've learned a lot, had amazing guests. Thank you to all of you who have come on the show if you're listening. But it feels like every other podcast in the thought leadership space.
yeah,
It's an
it does.
interview about God only knows what, depending on who we can fill the slot in that week for recording and what order they showed up in. And that's the stuff we run with. But it doesn't feel purposeful, you
Yeah.
know? It feels like kind of like a, yeah, I don't know. It feels almost separate entirely from SpeakerFlow. It doesn't feel like it adds any like value to the vision of what SpeakerFlow is, you know?
It's thought leadership and credibility. So that's something. It's not nothing,
Yeah,
but it's
sure. It's a
also
marketing
not
vehicle. Yeah.
it's not
And they get to
about the
know
thing
us,
that we
which is
help
cool. But
people
it's I
with
don't
though.
that's not the thing. Yeah, I care. Like it's cool that people listening to the show, like they're like, "Oh, we love the show. Thank you so much." And then, they become customers because they trust us more. Like all those things are cool. But it's not like I don't know, man. I'm not motivated by that. Like it's very extrinsic, Like
Yeah,
I
that's
want it
true.
to make sense. I want everything we do to be so purely focused that it's impossible not to understand what speaker flow is and does.
Laser beam
And
shit, dude.
laser beam, yeah. And it just feels like we've got a little bit of a broken laser beam at the moment. So
Yeah. We're like a 12-volt battery flashlight right now. So okay, that's
one
not
you have
true.
to smack to
We've
get
come a
to
long
turn
ways.
on.
Yeah, but focus is good.
Some people
Focus
listening to
is
this
good.
are like, what do you mean flashlight? I have a phone.
Yeah, that's yep. Yeah, does the new generation even know that there's
Dude,
a thing that exists that you can buy that's separate than your phone's flashlight?
yeah,
That's the real
exactly.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to Lila last night, and she brought up something about an iPad, and I was like, "Did you know that we didn't even have iPads when I was a kid?" And her response to that was, "What?" I was like,
What?
yeah, dude.
Yeah.
No
Well,
iPads, no concept. She has
yeah.
no box for a world without technology.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's crazy to think about what that's gonna be like for her, Like, I am, yeah, I'm very interested in,
yeah,
yeah, how it's gonna make our lives easier. Like,
yeah,
digital
it's true.
adoption will be done, so
That's true. Yep.
that's
Yeah,
crazy to
we
think
probably.
about. I was reflecting on that because of the Steam Decks recently. So, for those of you that don't know, in the background, Austin and I are big gamers. We spend way too many hours playing games together. It's awesome. And actually, we'll be playing tonight. So, looking forward to that. But
Any Diablo players on here?
any
Just let us
Diablo
know.
players,
We'll open up
yeah,
a. We'll
hit
start a
us up.
clan.
Yeah, we'll start a clan. That's right. A clan. Actually, not a bad idea. So,
Not a bad idea. We'll put a pin in that.
that's
Yeah.
really fun. Yeah, all right, hit us up. But we just got Steam Decks, which are like basically PCs, right? Like what is it, like a 8-inch, 9-inch screen in the center of two controller ends, basically, and they play all of the games, like all the games you can play on the PlayStation, the Xbox, your PC, like everything. It is absolutely mind blowing, and I remember growing up, like one Christmas, the only thing I wanted, it was brand new. I mean, and it was very strategic. I think they launched this in October or November,
Oh, I
but
know
the
exactly what
Game
you're talking
Boy
about.
Advance,
The Game Boy
Game
Advance
Boy
SP,
Advance,
dude. The
yeah,
square
yeah,
one that flips up.
yeah.
Am I
Well,
right?
actually, that one,
Dude.
no, that was before that one. It was the
Oh,
Advance.
you're talking about like
Yeah.
the
Dude, I'm an OG,
rectangle
like,
one.
the old
Yeah, dude.
Nintendos, I
Oh,
had the
wow.
thick
That's
black
good.
Game Boy, I got the blacklit one, I
Yep.
had all the collections growing up.
Wow.
Yeah, lots of Pokemon, all the things, but the
Yep.
Game Boy
Of
Advance,
course.
it was the first, like it was the one that was like, what's the shape? I don't know, almost it's not like a trapezoid, almost like a flattened octagon, like, if you imagine a stop sign and squish the top
Yeah.
half down a bit, right? Like, different design, fully backlit, like, had a bigger battery, played all these cool new games. Side note, my parents, they like gave me this big box for Christmas. It was my like only present, and I was like, this isn't a Game Boy because it was a giant box. But they did nested boxes and duct tape and all this stuff. I get to the bottom and the Game Boy Advance box is there, but it's empty.
Oh, man. Wow, that's
Oh,
brutal, dude. They
and
took you through the whole
they
journey.
wait, they wait, they made me go through the entire emotional roller coaster. 15 minutes goes by and they hand me the Game Boy. So anyway, all that to say, it's mind blowing the difference between that little thing and what we have accessible today. And the
Technology
fact
has
that,
improved dramatically. Yeah.
yeah, Lilo's growing up like that, that's pretty cool.
Yep. If anybody wonders why Taylor ever has a hot temper, you just learned the reason why.
Oh man, it's probably a little too true. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, that's hilarious.
yep. Yep.
Well, all that to say, things change, and it's kind of the theme for you know today's conversation. I feel like.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, when we were talking about this yesterday, thinking about like the lessons that we've learned running SpeakerFlow. When I was like getting ready for bed and stuff last night, I was thinking about this, and what's weird is that uh, we've never actually shifted the problem that we're solving with SpeakerFlow.
No, we haven't.
We've only ever changed the mode of delivery. And like, not to toot our horn and say that we have some magic sauce that other people don't or something, because this is available to anybody. And maybe this isn't actually some secret formula that works for everyone, but it certainly worked for us. But the whole point of like thought leadership really is that you're trying to solve a very specific problem. And it shouldn't matter what mechanism you use to solve that. In fact, what you should do is do it the best that you can and then pay attention and then laser focus on the thing that works really well. This is why we killed the coaching program that we had, because while technically it was a vehicle to solve the problem, it wasn't the best vehicle to solve the problem that we could find. So we adapted. And one of the ongoing gripes we've had about the quote unquote speaking industry, and you could extend this to any of the other mediums, the coaching industry, the
Coaching,
consulting industry,
yeah.
whatever, is it's just like one very specific mode of delivery to try to solve a bigger problem. And
It's limiting.
it's very limiting. Yeah. I guess it depends on what your goals are, right? If somebody just wants to be the keynote speaker, just wants to stand up on stages and do their thing, and like that's the thing that they're most passionate about, there's nothing wrong with saying I'm just gonna do that. But I don't think that's typical. I think most of the people that would be listening to this show have an expertise in something, can solve a problem somehow, and just want to be able to solve that problem for the clients and grow an awesome business along the way, obviously. But yeah, getting too laser focused on one specific mechanism for solving a problem can sometimes get in the way of what would otherwise be a better way, or even maybe just a more differentiated way to solve the problem. And that sometimes can be the thing that
Yeah.
makes the difference.
Right. Well, at least in the beginning, right? Like if you're uncertain of what the best delivery is, like that's when we should really be playing around like we did in the early days, what's actually going to work, but staying focused on the problem. I forget who told us this. Maybe this was a podcast episode. Maybe I heard it from somebody. Didn't think of this by myself, I don't think so. But it's actually come up a lot. I think I've had like two demos this week where this came up. But It's not so much about what you're offering. Like, if you're solely a speaker, cool. Solely a coach, cool. Solely a consultant, awesome. But don't label yourself as only that because it becomes commoditized. That's the problem I have with this is like you solve a problem, you're an expert in something, right? Like saying I'm just a speaker or I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, I'm a consultant doesn't differentiate you in conversation with people. Whereas if you say, I help these types of people solve this problem so they can see this outcome, the next question is how. and, then break down the program, right? But I think it's just the mindset alone of just saying like I'm only this and commoditizing yourself is the mistake that gets made. And where I was going this I think it's an analogy, yeah, but it's like Coca-Cola, for example. Put in your favorite soda brand, but Coca-Cola. When I just said Coca-Cola, you could practically taste it, right? You see the red, the white, maybe Santa Claus, 'tis the season. Like you have all these associations to Coca-Cola, but functionally you taste it. They're known for that thing, even though they have a billion different ways of delivering it. 12-ounce bottles, 2 liters, 55-gallon drums, a bajillion different flavors. Like the way they're delivering that service is many, but they're still known for that one thing.
Same candy bar, different wrapper.
Yeah. Same candy bar, different wrapper. I
Yeah.
love that
Yep.
phrase. Where did that one
Me
come
too.
from?
That was a good one. I don't remember. Probably Brad Ferris.
Might have been Brad.
Yep.
Yeah. Our business coach.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know Brad Ferris at Anchor Advisors in Chicago, he's a business coach. He's been our business coach since the beginning.
Very
Of
beginning.
any single person that's influenced the trajectory of SpeakerFlow, he's probably the number one person,
The
like outside
person.
of you and I, obviously. But
Yeah, right.
yeah,
The person.
yep. Good guy. The importance of having somebody that you can trust, that you can rely on is critical. Actually, it's the trusted advisor label. That's of all my favorite labels, I like the trusted advisor
Trusted
label.
advisor. Yeah.
And that's because an advisor advises on a specific thing, and that specific thing is the thing that can differentiate you. And as an advisor, you have lots of different available options as to how you do your advising. So
Yeah.
that's a good one. But he's been our advisor, and man, he's worth it.
Oh
It's so
yeah.
good. I don't know
No
how I
doubt.
could do. We call him business dad. In fact, the other day, Taylor and I were having a conversation, and
Uh,
we were just reflecting on how awesome Brad is. And he goes, "Thank you, Dad. I mean, Brad." I still think about that every day.
yeah.
That's good.
It
Yeah,
was good.
yeah,
It's crazy, like, to think back on, like, to your point, right? Since day one, we've been solving the same problem. It's just how we've been delivering it, right? Like, and we started this whole thing because systems were lacking. Like, no one was using systems, or they were extremely frustrated by them, or they were just underutilized. And like we found, like, this is the whole foundation to a business. Like, if we don't have an assembly line to the whole thing, it's impossible to scale it. And the vast majority of folks in this space want to scale it or at least bring on team and all those things. So that's been the problem since day one. Solving that problem though and figuring that out along the way, like, and it's a blue ocean for us, you guys. Like, it's been hard to
it's
figure
been
out
hard.
what the hell we do here.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what's like our
like
first
functionally.
offer? Yeah, like if we build a
Oh
timeline here. So we
gosh.
launched the business,
Oh.
it was May 2019, and
Well,
all we did this
technically, it was like
right?
April. We
April,
closed our
yeah,
first
yeah,
deal in April of
in
19, and
April,
I
the business
remember this
formed in May,
vividly
yeah.
because that money sat in Stripe and we couldn't
Yeah,
touch
because
it
we
because
couldn't
we
touch
weren't a
it.
business
Yeah.
yet.
Well, and what
So,
was what was yeah, what was
yeah.
funny too is like we started it with what, like negative a few grand or something. Like,
Yep.
we just pooled in some money to like, and it wasn't even a bank account. It was like, all right, I'll get the LLC, you get the blah blah blah. Like, it was just this, yeah, thing. It's really scrappy. And I remember I still have that sheet of paper where we came up with the idea. Like, you guys, idea for SpeakerFlow was born off of like an existential crisis, and I don't even know how many countless hours of conversation between Austin and I. But eventually, the conversation led to like, what the hell do we want to do with our lives? Like, everything hasn't, like, so far we haven't really found what we were passionate about doing or who we were passionate about helping. And after this long series of conversations, we realized the thing we were passionate about is this. And then the whole idea for speaker flow came up, largely because I was kind of deep in trying to understand the flow state for a while, and I thought like there was this commonality, which is still true. I freaking love our brand and how we position this whole thing. But I remember I still have that like piece of paper stashed away somewhere on one of these bookshelves that have all the original logos and the ideas and thoughts behind it. And when, and I think that was like March-ish, end of March, and then like
Yep.
we decided and just started taking action. Like we just started reaching out on LinkedIn and then basically saying like, "Hey, does this sound remotely interesting?" And like the uptick was really quick, and that's why we had to get the business actually formed in May of 2019. But we
Shout
knew
out
the
to Aaron
problem.
O'Malley, our first
Shout
client,
out our first client, Aaron. Yeah,
and actually
man.
who got us our second and third client too.
And second and
So
third, yeah,
shout out to
referrals
David
go a long way.
Raymond,
David,
number two. Yep.
yeah. Jacob Green, I think, was in that mix too.
Yep.
Yeah. What's up, Jacob?
Yep.
So yeah, but the thing is like we knew the problem was there, but we had no clue. Like, how do we help people solve this problem? And
I mean, we had some ideas there,
we
just
had
bad.
some ideas. Yeah,
We
like what was
created,
the
look,
first
the
offer?
6-week program. It was a
Yeah, it was
6 or a
6 and
12-week
12, 6 or
program.
12. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And the entire thing was basically just like an
Spreadsheet.
Excel sheet that was like, here's all the major categories of tech that you can have in your business. And here's the one that we recommend and why. And here's like the page to go sign up for it. You're welcome.
Peace out.
It's so
Mic
bad.
drop.
Look, here's the thing though. Like, one of the things that I believe is true about business in general, by way of lived experience through running SpeakerFlow with this intentionality, is that being people first always wins.
Always
If you're
position.
relationship oriented, it always wins. Like, even if we had a terrible process for trying to solve this problem with version 1 and version 2 and version 3 and version 4, and however many it's taken to get to us to this point. But like, you just actually care about the person. Like, you just take the time to like have conversations and just like empathize and really understand where they're at. And like, that's something that's not a skill set that you really have to even develop. Like, anybody can do that at any time, just like genuinely care. And it makes all the difference in the world. It can make an even otherwise not valuable offer substantially more valuable.
Oh
And
yeah, for sure. Because they just care
that's
about the people,
important.
let's
Yeah,
help
that's what
them.
matters.
Well, and I think like too, like it's not like we were like, okay, we're setting up like even you guys listening, like it's not like we were like, okay, I want to get on stage. You can compare yourself to millions of people on earth who do that. And like how do they do it? Where do they speak? Like, oh, don't even get me down the rabbit hole of like, I don't know where to find leads because oh Jesus. You don't know how good you have it. Miguel, I so you don't like uh you had an offer, you had a problem to solve, you had a way of doing it. Like for us, there was nothing to compare to. Like, it's not like we were setting up a roofing business or a website development company. We were like, people have a problem having business systems for some reason. Like, and it didn't seem like anyone else, especially niche oriented, solved the problems except on the enterprise level. And all the enterprise level implementation stuff is like, we're going to set up Salesforce for you, and that is it. Like, but the problem was that, like, there's no operating system. Nothing talks with one another. You have to be an automation genius. Like, how do you even get a grip on all of this stuff? And we knew what the problem was, but figuring out like how to like structure the company in a way that would give us the best mode of delivery was, yeah, just a journey of trial and error. And
Yep.
I'm
And the
grateful
best
for
way to
all of it.
serve
It
it.
gave me so many labels. It helped us figure out what we're really good at and what we're not, and kept us open-minded to different things. Like, we started with the consulting thing, and what's funny is, functionally these days, we spend about 12 weeks with people, 90 days to get all their systems set up. But I think in the early days, right, it's like, these are the systems we recommend. Go get them and let us know if you have questions. That
Well, that
eventually
was
then
the
built up
issue.
a little bit. Yeah, we got
Expecting
free it.
people to be able to just learn how to use the
Learn.
tech
Yeah,
itself, like
that was a
that
mistake.
was, yeah, one of the best decisions we ever made was just deciding that we would
build it for you.
develop the processes and systems internally to be able to do the implementation in house. As soon as we
Yeah,
made that decision, things got substantially easier for us. Well, okay, maybe not easier. Things got clearer. Like how
yeah,
we can
sure.
actually turn this into a scalable thing got a lot clearer.
And that didn't take us very long to sort out. It was but we got interrupted, I think, with the pandemic. Like, if I
Yeah.
recall, it was late 2019 or so, we were like, "Okay, we're gonna set these different tools up that we know well." But we kinda had to use everything depending on the person's budget and what they
Yep.
needed. Like, we had to use a lot of different business systems, and we were like, "Okay, we're gonna do the implementation for you and guide you through it." But it was still really rocky because, like, we were always reinventing the wheel depending on the tools people chose. Eventually, we started to figure out, like, how this stuff should be structured, and so, like, again, reinventing the wheel, like and then we'd still, like, need to be, like, geniuses on every piece of business tech on earth, and it's like, how in the hell do you train a team to master every system, period, and then
You
why
don't.
and we have to do it from ground zero every time, like, not scalable whatsoever,
Oh.
and then the pandemic came.
Dude, I'll never forget. It was at the NSA Thrive event
It was, like,
in
the week after shit shut down.
Yes. Yeah, it was while we were there that the news story started coming out of this
Oh,
COVID thing.
yeah,
I'll
right.
never forget Brittany Hodak. Brittany, if you're listening to this, what's up? Brittany came over to us and was like, "Hey, are you guys seeing this? Like, I'm gonna have to like cancel some events." Or I forget exactly how the conversation went, but I was like, "Wow, this is crazy." And me being very skeptical at the time, I was like, "Okay, well, everybody's freaking out, and this thing's gonna pass." Boy, was I wrong about that prediction. Holy crap. How about just like shift and
Oh,
change the course of humanity as a whole? Who could have
yeah,
ever guessed that that was how that was going to play out? Holy crap.
right. Well, and then
But
it
yeah,
it was
bad
like
time to
in
start a business.
yeah, and that was, like, 6 months in, and we weren't, like, even paying our like, maybe we were getting some portion, like, some money at the time. I'm pretty sure, like, we were still side hustling to some degree, like,
Oh,
during
I
this,
remember
like
being poor.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
poor, dirt poor, like, nothing
Yeah.
going on.
Every dollar we made
Every
got instantly
dollar,
invested back
yeah,
into the business.
instantly, yeah, it was yeah, tough, and then COVID hit, and I remember, man, like, it was probably a week or 2, though, after we got back from that conference. My phone just started ringing with all of our clients in the consulting end of our business being like,
Firing us. Yeah.
"Yeah, we c" and, of course, you can't say no, like, it's
No.
the
Yeah.
word in, you
It
just
was
say,
horrible. It was a
yeah,
bloodbath
it's like
out
they
there,
lost
man.
their
Oh,
business, like,
man.
entirely,
Yeah.
and it
We
was
had one
sad,
client
and
that lost $300,000 of $400,000 she had on the books in like a week
oh,
straight.
yeah,
Just
it was
yeah, it
so
was
hard, and I know
terrible.
many of you listening, like, you're
Oh,
in
we
those,
remember.
like yeah, we
Yeah.
remember, that type of
Yeah.
thing, and
Uh,
yeah, but it was still
yeah.
difficult, right? Because now, like, if anything was gonna kill us, it was gonna be this,
Yeah.
and so how do we adapt our offer in a way that doesn't cost thousands of dollars, but can still help right now when there's downtime and some reinvention possible, and group coaching came into the
That's the
mix.
answer. That's it. You stop doing it one on one, you start doing it in group
Doing it in the
environment.
group.
Cheaper for
That's
the
right.
client,
Cheaper for the
scaled leverage delivery. And that was actually it was more or less a success. It was good.
it
Look,
was
we
good.
built some of the most solid
Yeah,
relationships
solid
we've
yeah,
built in
our
the entire
best,
business
yeah,
because of
for
that
sure,
program.
because of that
That
program. It
really
was good.
it contextualized how like the training element of our business needs to fit in. And it taught
Right.
us that we can do it in a more scalable way via coursework, which
Well,
meant that we could be more impactful, which is
I
good.
think an important lesson here, though, is, like, I didn't know what I was signing up for group coaching, right? That label has implications to it. Like, we're yeah, we're not like, I'm not qualified to be a coach, right? And what we found
Sure.
is, like, it's training
Yeah,
more than anything, right? That's the
it is
thing, it's
training.
systems
That's what
training,
people
right? But
need.
we didn't
Yeah.
have the right labels, and so what happened is, bring on a client and their expectations of what was possible were completely out of line with what we could actually deliver. And there were also some just unreasonable expectations people had, like, oh, with your magical advice and me doing nothing, I'm going to make millions of dollars or whatever. Like, that's just not how it works. But at the end of the day, it was our fault because we had the wrong label for the thing that we wanted to be doing. And granted, we were still actually figuring out, like, what is it that what is the delivery mechanisms that's best for SpeakerFlow. And I think the mix of that and the label isn't wrong, and or was wrong, that combined thing. But then, of course, we realized, like, with this stuff, we don't need to charge for this stuff. Like, we can produce courses that teach you all of it. We can do monthly meetings with all of our users and things to, give them access to it, or, other ideas. We can create like process oriented courses. Like, I think from day one, our goal has always been to give it away. Like, all of you listening have been to our resources page on the website. Like, we don't hold anything back. Like, go take it and run with it. And if you can do something with it, awesome. But if you want somebody to implement it, that's where we come into the mix. And I felt like when we made that decision, like, I felt free. I felt
So
this
true,
sense of
dude.
relief. Like, wow, we can really just do implement the system, build systems for people. And at this point, of course, we had, Zoho in the mix and the operating system getting built. And like, we could only do that and try and become the best at it and give everything else away for free. And then, yeah, that felt so much more like, yeah, intrinsically motivating,
Yeah, no doubt.
holding
There's
it back.
something to be said about well, this is the Alex Hormozy thing. Give away the solution, sell the implementation.
On the
Like
implementation.
we just it's value first. That's the thing. Is like, look, you can just have all the things. Like we have to do I have to pay staff people to do work. So like we can't do work for people for free. But if you want to like learn the solution and like go and do yourself, freaking more power to you. Go for it. And like that's an empowering thing. It's like the entire thing is based off of empowerment. You're either empowering people to go do it by themselves, or if that's a bad use of their time or money or whatever, then they can outsource it to us and we'll do it for them. But
Mhm.
the whole thing is just based off of value creation. Nothing is ever held back. And like this is one of the things that's fascinating about other coaching organizations in this space. And not everybody is like this. Like one of the people that I love that I think is like the model in the opposite of what I'm about to say is David Newman, who is not afraid to just like, here's the things that work. So shout out to you, David. Thank you for running an awesome coaching company. But there's so many people that just dangle the carrot. Like here, you can't. These are the problems we can solve, but you got to pay me before you can get them. And like there's no guarantee there. And like this is why I'll never forget actually when we first started SpeakerFlow, we started getting involved in the communities and the National Speakers Association, and people told us they're like, you're gonna be fighting an uphill battle because there have been snake oil salesmen in this industry for as long as it's existed, and people are highly skeptical of it. And looking back now, I can see why that's the case, because think of how many coaching practices we've seen pop up in the last 4 years where there's somebody saying they've got some magical answer that's going to get
It's
somebody
mind
booked
blowing.
50 times a year, and then it never pans out and the whole thing falls apart and the reputation's destroyed and people are right back where they started and more frustrated.
No.
Yeah, it's rough, man. That's yeah. So, and that thought's been in the back of our head since day one is like, okay, how can we be completely in alignment with what we're telling people we can accomplish and not? And this is why, for those of you that have been listening, that have been on this journey with us since day one, this is why we pivot. I hate that word, but that's why we pivot the way that we do, because when we find that we're out of alignment with that core belief system that we have to change
Instantly
something.
look to change it.
So,
Yeah.
what's hilarious about the situation with group coaching, though, is we realized the model was not that effective for the thing that our clients actually needed. And we felt kind of gross feeling like we were keeping things behind closed doors. But then, like, not we didn't learn the lesson about focus at that point, because what we did was you went full implementation and I went full one-on-one coaching, and for the next year that's
Yeah.
how it was. We did more or less what we're doing now, and I did
Right.
accelerator, and that
Well, it's
was
because I think here's what's
yeah.
interesting though is at this moment in time too, we also had some other rings in the fire, right? Like we had this like the Intel engine branded under Sam Richter, which is an amazing tool. Sam, what's up? We had like I think we were maybe in conversations with eSpeakers to build Gig OS, which was a branded version of SpeakerFlow, but was really just an integration between the two. We started seeing the world open up a bit more and people to have more budget, and so we realized maybe we can go back to the one-on-one stuff, but we didn't know what that was going to look like. So the accelerator program came out, which was more like I mean, in a weird way, it's almost like Flowzone is today, but regardless, a lot more hand holding, one on one, or Flowzone Plus, a lot more one on one stuff, and it still had the coaching element. And then we were still trying to figure out how the implementation stuff was going. And what was interesting is I mean, I remember, and this should have told us everything. We ran one webinar when we first started working on SpeakerFlow system. Shout out to Julie Holmes for helping us connect the dots with Zoho One in the early days. But we ran a webinar and it was cheap. It was so cheap. We just gave away the CRM and said, all right, see you later. Like no functional support, nothing. It was like $497. We made like 30 sales from one webinar, like of a system, right? That's like something that was built for them. And then the implementation kept building and building and building, yet we were still looking for these other ways. Like it was right in front of us in hindsight the whole time.
People
But
were
we were
just
trying to
begging
find
for
all
it.
these begging for it, all these other ways. And
Yeah.
I don't really know. I don't. It's just not relevant until it's relevant, I guess. But we're curious people. We want to rule everything out and figure it out. So we had all these irons in the fire at this moment in time, and this was probably what 21 ish. Now we're talking,
Yep.
where we had the accelerator, the implementation was going, the Intel engine, Gig OS,
That cruised all the way
even
until October of 21.
different
Yep.
courses we partnered up with people on to try and sell. Like, whew, we confused the shit out of the market for a
Yep.
while
Oh,
because
yeah.
some people had one experience with SpeakerFlow and other people were getting this entire different experience. And, some people knew us as like the lead gen tool, even though it was powered from Sam Richter. And some of, like there was just no consistency.
And it was such a pain
Eventually,
in the ass to
it was
manage on the
so
back end.
hard.
Like,
It
look,
was so hard.
yeah, it was rough, dude. This was the stage in business where we were prioritizing SpeakerFlow growing and our clients' needs over literally everything else,
Everything else.
including my health.
Yeah,
Like it
our
was right
health,
around
it
this
was
time I
bad.
was sick and not sleeping,
Yeah.
and I had gained like 80 pounds. Like that was a rough time. That was a rough time. We were trying so hard. Like, yeah, it was. Yep. But yeah, like
Yeah.
I think one of the big lessons that I learned from that entire experience is the uh importance of like listening to your intuition. Like the entire time I knew something was weird, but I just felt like I needed to continue pushing the rope. And like, you were talking about a book that your mother-in-law gave you recently, I think, about the importance of knowing when
Knowing
to
when to
quit.
quit. Yeah.
And damn, that's a tough lesson, but that is an important lesson. And one of the other things that's hard about this too, right, is that it's not that like this confusion was causing SpeakerFlow to struggle like it
No.
was in hindsight, but we've grown 4 years in a row. We've never not grown year over year, and not grown by a pretty substantial margin. So
Substantial,
like what
yeah.
we was doing was working. And especially when it came time after we had like realized that we needed to focus, and especially that we were going to just drill everything down into one specific offer. I mean, we had like I guess I don't care throwing numbers around. $450,000 a year worth of other things, specifically
Mhm.
coaching, that we were ready to axe. That that
Facts.
was
Yeah,
going to go away.
kill
It
it.
was like, look, we're going to risk potentially having our revenue in the next
That's
year
right.
to be able to be more focused. And I
That
mean,
was a
that was a gamble. That was
hard
a gamble that paid off. But I
yeah.
mean, that
But
was
you get to a
terrifying.
point where you're so sick of being spread thin and not in your zone of genius, doing the things you want to be doing for people, like, yeah, at some point, it's just it doesn't matter what it takes to just call it, and we
Yep.
did. I remember too,
Oh
we
yeah.
got hate. Like,
Oh,
some
people were
people
so
would, like,
pissed.
reach so
Yeah.
pissed. They would reach out, they'd be like, "Your business is gonna fall apart. This is a terrible mistake. Screw all of you, by the way, and, like, it's not your fucking business. I will fight for it all day long. I'll do whatever the hell I want." You understand? So, all that in mind, and then and then I called all of our partners, and all of our partners were great. They were very gracious. Sam, eSpeakers, thank you so much. We love you. Still recommend them all the time, and we still have our integration. But I remember having to have those hard conversations. I'd say, Sam, we're not going to white label the thing anymore. It's causing too much confusion. eSpeakers, guys, like, love you guys. We need to label this as our own integrations. Creating a separate brand isn't going to help either of us. Like, and then we had to kill all of our accelerator coaching members, all of the group coaching stuff switched off overnight, and we didn't even have a backup plan. Like, we're
No.
not scheduling more meetings with people. We were like, all we're going to do is make the speaker flow system the best possible system to use that we can, and make the implementation process done for you systems as flossy as humanly possible. And we killed literally everything else,
Yeah.
and it
That was a
worked.
leap. It worked. Yeah, for sure.
It was
And
the
look,
best.
like,
Never been better. It worked.
it was
It's
the
been
best
rocky.
decision we
It's
could have
trying to
ever
figure out the
possibly made.
process and the conveyor, but it allowed us to build an assembly line. Like if you think about an assembly line, right? Like inputs equal the same product outcome every single time. Like for a single car, for example, one assembly line for one car. Like it allowed us to finally build an assembly line. This is the thing we need to build. Are we going to make that happen? And then now we could really start to, and it's funny, what's the cobbler's son's shoes
Yeah.
story, like we could
No doubt.
finally systemize SpeakerFlow.
Yep.
And
And that did not happen overnight either. Even for us being systems people, it took us, I mean, it really took us until the end of last year, basically, to like
yeah,
really define that process.
yeah,
That's when we decided to create our implementation planner. Anybody that's gone through our process over the last year has had a Google Doc that we use to map out the whole process and get really into the weeds so we can understand how
yeah.
things
For
work.
all the
So we start
project
hiring
automation in the
people.
back end, the hiring, yeah, the
Yep.
ongoing
It
training.
contextualized all of the other decisions that we had to make. I think that's actually maybe one of the main benefits that focus brings is that it's a filter. It's a filter that lets you make decisions more easily. And
That's good.
it makes that process a lot easier. And that's honestly one of the worst parts of being a business owner is that you have to make the decisions that can sometimes have really positive or really negative consequences. And like anytime there's lots of variables to have to consider when making those decisions, it's impossible to feel as confident landing on something. But when you're laser focused, there's just less variables. It's easier to land on something and then measure whether or not it's working. And
Yeah, I
yeah.
remember, how like, how in life somebody says something to you and you're like, that makes sense, but you haven't lived it, like you don't know that experience. Like, for example, one of those actually things that happened recently, we were talking with our business coach, and today, luckily because of our focus, Austin and I have never been closer to truly living in our zones of genius in SpeakerFlow. Meaning we're building team underneath us and we're removing ourselves as bottlenecks. If you all know we're the biggest bottlenecks in our company.
We're sorry. We
And
love you.
our we're doing our best. Brad, our business coach, he's like, once that happens, and you're no longer the bottlenecks in these areas, your business will grow naturally, simply because you're not the bottleneck. And he said that, and that makes sense. I have yet to experience though, and I'm a little even skeptical. Like, are you sure? Like, are you? I might have to do more sales, which is going to keep me up as a bottleneck. Like, I don't know. So anyway, I'm waiting to live that out. One of those experiences that happened kind of during this process is kind of the phrase that like one, and a lot of focus experts they talk about this. But once you choose something to focus on, you realize how deep you can really go. And until you make the decision to get focused, you'll never be able to see how deep you can really go, which means it's like you're jumping into the deep end and you have no idea how deep that stuff can go. And you're not even sure if it can go deep. And so there's fear. And I think that's why for a lot of people who are also doing many things in their business, it's hard to make the decision to say, I'm only going to solve this problem. Like for a speaker, I have all these different topics. Like if I choose one, then what if there's not enough market? Like all these fears come up. And I remember when we finally got to our breaking point and we were like, okay, you know what? Yeah, we're going to now only focus on implementation,
And we accept the
kill everything
consequences of that
else.
decision.
I mean, it was almost overnight. I probably put it in about a month after we settled into only doing that thing. And the world of opportunity of how we could improve it like opened up. It was, yeah, a crazy experience. Like,
It's one that we're still figuring out where the bottom is. I
yeah,
don't know if
well,
there is a bottom.
there's
Yeah,
not,
we
and
just keep
that's the
going.
lesson.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
end to how deep you can go on one specific thing and how
Yeah.
polished you can make it and how incredible of an experience you can make it, and I think, like, that opened up for me personally, probably wasn't until the end of last year. It's been about a year
Yep.
when we made the decision to
100%.
kill it all.
Yep. And what's crazy is how much faster you can make progress once you've made that switch. Because the thing about going deep in a space is that not only do you become the best at it, or at least a contender for the best at it, and it gets easier to differentiate and the rest of it, but your reputation. Like, this is one of the things that we talk about when people bring up like ideal client profile. Like, who should I
Mm,
go target for leads? It's like, be as specific as you humanly can be. Like, every parameter you can possibly think of, be that specific. Because if it works, and it doesn't always work, but if it works, then your ability to develop a reputation as an expert in that space grows dramatically, because people talk. Like, you're now taking advantage of human nature, the connection factor of human nature. And that's another thing that I think is like counterintuitive to what you expect, is that you feel like the more specific you are, the more limited the opportunity is. But in reality, if you're spread too thin, you never even have the opportunity to be able to grow.
yeah.
It requires specificity to be able to develop that reputation. I can't think of a better word for it besides reputation. But once you do, like, here's the thing: do some Googling about the world's foremost expert on systems for thought leadership businesses. You're going to find one company. That's it. And it's because we're so unbelievably specific. And any business owner can be that specific. It requires a lot of work and trial and error. Once again, it's taken us 4 years really to get to the point of this level of clarity. But I mean, we went from, yeah, we've grown a lot in the last year, both in terms of revenue and team size and our capacity for being able to deliver work. And like, every single thing has improved since that decision was made. It was sweeping improvements.
And we've talked about this a lot this week. We haven't mentioned it in the podcast yet, but when we're so spread thin, you have to say no to a lot of things that you don't want to say no to. Like, for us, it's little things like somebody's having an urgent issue with their system for some reason. We never had the bandwidth for a team member to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, how can we solve the problem?" Like, there's all these moments where we want to say yes to things. We know we can improve the client experience, but you're so spread thin trying to deliver all these different things and work on all the stuff and run the business at the same time. And we can finally start saying yes to things. And it's moved. And we've also had a lot of these conversations. But in the last year, it's really felt like, okay, I'm going to back up. As a human being, there are only certain things that you enjoy doing, right? There's skills assessments and persona assessments that'll tell you everything you need to know about yourself. But all of those personality traits mean you are really good at a specific set of things. When you're running a business, you have to do all of the things for a while, and that is incredibly draining. And as, I don't know, hardworking as Austin and I are, we are not the best at certain things. Also,
Most things.
yeah, most things. Also, when you're spread thin, you don't have time to, like, you have to drop balls, I guess is my point. And you have to make decisions about what you're willing to do, even though it's not best for the overall experience, simply because you're limited right now. So, as you get more focused and as we've grown, I've realized, like, what I personally prefer doing can live separately from what SpeakerFlow can do. You know what I mean? Like, even though, like, I'll be honest with you guys, some of you have already picked up on this. I'm not the best at support and making our call, right? Like, I to be honest, I don't like it. It's not the thing I'm good at, but I care so deeply that you all get the best experience possible from SpeakerFlow, not from me. And so I think, like, as you continue to, like, the thing I'm starting to realize, this is again been only over the last year, but as we've gotten more focused, like, what I personally prefer doing and what SpeakerFlow can do are two different things, and that's opened up like, the realm of possibility of how I'm objectively removed from the equation of making those decisions, and it's going to be
Well, I
better.
think it speaks to that, like, your business ultimately is a container for you to be able to do the thing that you love doing. And
Right.
what that requires is for you to set up systems, meaning people, technology, and process, that handle the parts of the business that are not the thing that you like doing. And like this is not groundbreaking news. Like this is just what like delegation in
Yeah,
running a business is. Like
yeah,
this is
right.
the least original thought anybody's ever had, but like it's so true and it's so hard to really picture until you start building the business. But like for all the people that have questioned whether or not it's possible to like delegate the things that you don't love doing, I want you to think about something for a minute here. Okay. Taylor and I, in order for SpeakerFlow to exist and offer the service that we do, we have to be thorough experts of this industry, the thought leadership industry, this type of business model. We have to be extremely familiar with Zoho, the operating system that we implement, and we have to be pretty dang familiar with the rest of the like technology components that feed
That are
into it,
around
different
it.
website platforms and all the other tools that we migrate from. And that is a gigantic amount of information. That's an entire career's worth of information from two of us that have allowed that to be possible. And so since day one, the conversation you and I have had is like, how is it even remotely possible that
Possible.
we build a business that isn't dependent on Austin and Taylor's brains being
Yeah,
involved in order for this thing to work? And it wasn't until very recently that we realized that that is the case. And for us personally, what we realized is that we just have to chunk that down into enough specific components to hire specific people to do specific things and then have a process that ties it together well enough to make that possible. But we took something that has no other business model that I can think of that we could look at as an example for how to do this. That is an unbelievably specific niche skill set. And we've been able to delegate it to people that have absolutely no experience in either one of those things. In fact, I
yeah.
think our entire team right now is entirely built of people that have not done this work before, that we
Yeah,
trained
that's right.
from ground zero to be able
It's
to do
ground
it.
zero. Yeah.
And so, whatever abstract thing in your business that you feel like you're stuck doing forever because nobody else can do it but you, it's a lie that you tell yourself. And you absolutely can do it. But you have to be focused enough about what it is that you want to deliver. And you have to be clear enough about what it is that you actually like doing for that to ever even be possible to begin with. And that's a call to action. Figure out what those two things are. Figure out what it is that you do better than anybody else and what it is that you like doing better than anybody else. And figure out the mechanism that you can use to get that outcome for people better than anybody else. And the rest becomes logistics. And it requires attention and observation and measurement and dedication and focus and grinding and doing the stuff that you don't want to do to the best of your ability for as long as it takes to do that. And it requires pushing even when it looks like there's no end in sight. And it requires the creative thinking and it requires the disciplined thinking. And like none of this stuff is easy, but it is 100% possible. I know it
It
from a
is.
lived experience. I'm an idiot. For those of you that don't know, Austin didn't even graduate high school. I'm somebody that ran away from home at 16. I like on paper, I should be I should be in a cardboard box, truly. But you can do it.
You can do
You
it.
can do it. It is 100% possible. And
It is. Yeah.
those self-limiting beliefs I think get in the way of a lot of people being able to spend more time doing the things that they love. And actually at the broader level, the world suffers because of that. Is that
Oh,
you
yeah.
as a thought leader, as an ability who can solve problems and make people's lives better, hinder your ability to do that at the maximum level that you can because you're stuck doing things that you don't want to do. And once again, to iterate, the way that you get out of that is systems. Thank
Yeah.
you
No
for
doubt.
coming to my
That's
TED Talk.
exactly right. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. So
So
we're
I think
here.
one of the things that we wanted to talk about in this episode is like where we're going from here.
Where we're going.
We're
Yeah.
almost an hour into this show. Let's wrap it up with that. Look, here's the reality of this episode. It's the finale of Technically Speaking. We're taking a break from the podcast for a little while. It may be a permanent indefinite break from the podcast. We might shift our focus and do something else next. I have no idea, but it feels like if this is going to be at a minimum a temporary goodbye from this show, we owe it to the people to let them know what the plans are.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think if we go back to like the beginning of this episode, I mentioned that technically speaking, it's been fun. It's been cool to have guests and learn from people, but it's out of alignment with what SpeakerFlow is today. And mm, and as long as that's if we make the decision that's what we want, awesome. That's cool. And we'll keep doing it. But the future, as far as this show goes, it's going to end where it's at with this episode. If we decide to spin up another podcast, it's going to be in the lens of what we do at SpeakerFlow. But there's also opportunities for us to reach you in different formats, particularly things like, more video content and putting our efforts there. We just want to make sure that the content that we're delivering to our folks is in complete alignment with how we implement at SpeakerFlow. So give away the solution, sell the implementation. We want to make sure that all of our content that we give away for free is actually helping you solve the solutions we set out to. And so we're going to take a pause, and we expect, a decent turnaround on spinning stuff up, but it's going to happen sometime in 24, and it's going to be a format that creates a lot more value, I think, than what we've done so far.
Yep. I think I don't even know if I would say a lot more value, because what we've done so far has been valuable, but it's going to be more in alignment with what
Yeah,
SpeakerFlow is about. And I think
more
because
content.
of that, it's more valuable. So
Yeah, totally.
we have some cool stuff cooking, you guys. We're
Yeah,
not
we do.
taking a break here because we just need to figure out what content looks like. Some of this too is that like we just have some really huge priorities for the next year. We have
We do.
version 2 of our CRM coming out, the biggest update that we've ever had. We're on
Loads of custom
1.7. We've
software.
gone through 7 iterations without calling it the next gen of CRM. This is the next
Yeah,
gen of CRM. That's a pretty lofty statement coming from us. Coursework, yes. Coursework is coming. One of the things that I've been really excited about for a long time now that we just have not had the space to be able to do. And you know what? Some of our effort that has gone into podcast recording up until this point may be partially redirected into this, but creating courses that are not just about the technology component to systems, but about the process and people
process.
components of systems.
Yeah,
It just so happens that Taylor and I are really good at recruiting people, and teaching people how to build teams and delegate is something that we definitely can do and is in perfect alignment with the overall ethos of SpeakerFlow and the process side of this. Like, you guys, all of the lessons that we learned and advice that we gave while we were doing coaching, and it was a lot. We're not anything magical here, but we got the reps in enough times that we really know what works and what doesn't at this point. We've already just given that information away for free on our resources library and inside of SpeakerFlow University. But being able to create dedicated courses that show people, here's how you generate leads, here's how you fulfill in a standardized way, here's how you tackle finances so that it's not intimidating. I have no idea, but there are so many lessons that we've learned by way of running SpeakerFlow and by working with our clients that I would love to be able to just give away the same way that we just give away the rest of our content. And
that's right.
these are some big things that are coming next year.
Well, and the thing I really want to communicate is, like, we're putting the pedal to the metal as it relates to growing the team. Austin's like core mission here is to remove ourselves from the weeds. We have to. Like, we've been close to it for a very long time, and we've loved the relationships that we've built and the one-on-one work we got to do. But in order for us to hit any of the goals that Austin just mentioned, and for us to continue making SpeakerFlow as valuable as possible, we have to be out of the day-to-day of the growth of the business and the operations of the business. We have to be the idea makers and continue to layer and level up SpeakerFlow. And it's not like we have to wait entirely until we're in those seats before all that stuff happens. But my point is we've never been more able to make that happen. And as soon as it does, it's going to allow us to make SpeakerFlow like the best company to work with in this space, like, period. And yeah, I'm so committed to making that outcome a reality. And so what that means, to our point of focus earlier, is for now, we're going to take a break on this and make stuff happen and come back with a lot more, yeah, value going forward, I think.
Cheers to that. For those of you that have been with us for 3 seasons and 150 episodes, thank you.
Thank you.
For our clients that are listening, thank you.
Thank
It's because of you that we've been able to get to this point, and because we're able to level up and be able to create even more value. So this is an overall extremely positive thing. And at the
Amazing.
same time, right, I acknowledge the fact that this is a change and something different. And so if nothing else, I hope I hope our listeners know we love you and we're grateful for you. So thank you for helping SpeakerFlow become what it is today. And we're excited for the next chapter.